So one of the other companies that's attracted a huge amount of talent in machine learning is IBM for its Watson team. The man who's managing that project is called David Kenny, and I'm going to invite him to do a little presentation before we have a little conversation about some of the opportunities and implications of Watson. David Kenny.
Bonjour tout le monde. It's a privilege to be with all of you. I appreciate the last presentation. It's true, we did Deep Blue. It was the beginning. That was simple machine learning. That was 20 years ago. In the 20 years between Deep Blue and now, we also won Jeopardy, which was a different set of tasks. And we've been working to make AI work in everyday life. So it's a movement forward. So it's good you have the beginnings on neural networks and how it works. What I thought I could add to the conversation is where we see it in our lives today. So today is July 1st. Today is my 5-month anniversary at the head of Watson. So I'm pretty new to it, but I have to tell you that it's just an amazing group of people. And between Deep Blue and now, the IBM company has spent billions of dollars and tens of thousands of people on these projects. And we also very much believe in the entrepreneur, which is why I'm here. So we make more and more of Watson available in the last couple of years as APIs directly to startups. And I actually came from that side. So I was using Watson in my last job, which was to do the weather forecast. And the thing I wanted to do was do what Google did when they mapped the Earth for the mobile phone. I wanted to map the atmosphere so that we could know the weather for 3 billion locations on Earth on a mobile phone, which means that it's now calculated 26 billion times a day. And that was done simply for the IoT or sensor network. And it was my vision to build a new business on the intersection of sensor networks and IoT. But Ginni Rometty at IBM had the same idea. So if you write a big enough check, you change what you do. And she bought the company, and I came to IBM to take on just this huge project of Watson and how it can work for so many people. And I saw just firsthand the amazing ability to improve our forecast and our precision of what weather meant came. So I'm thrilled to do that again, thrilled to have these APIs open to all of you. I would say, and if you were at our booth or you see anything we do, every day I'm amazed, and I'm not just amazed by Watson and the IBM part of it, I'm amazed by what other people do with artificial intelligence and what they're building to help improve decision making, to help improve the way you engage with customers, and to help, as was just said, improve creativity and innovation. So I just really quickly want to give you a few real life examples so that you understand that AI is now, it will get better. We've made a lot of progress in 20 years. We'll make a lot of progress in the next 20, but it's here right now and it's in your life. So the first example is medical. This is our first focus. We've been doing this since 2011. It's a critical decision that we're making. Doctors have an enormous challenge to stay up to date. Let me just talk about oncologists. Oncologists need to spend 160 hours a week if they're going to stay up on the new literature and treatment options that are published each week in the field of cancer. Let me go more narrow. In 2016, sadly, 2 million women were globally diagnosed with breast cancer. In the last few years, we've gone from 4 breast cancer treatments to over 800. How's a doctor supposed to know what to do? These women have great physicians, but these oncologists don't always have the best tool. So we worked with Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital, who kept records on every patient that had ever been there for their life, during and after their treatment. And we took 15,000 hours of training by these oncologists at Memorial Sloan Kettering with 600,000 pieces of medical evidence, 2 million pages of text, 1.5 million patient records, and 26,000 clinical cases, just to get started. To give you a sense of it, today Watson has over 300 million patient lives just in the medical database. That was great. It helped Memorial Sloan Kettering, but they can share it with others. So that same system has now gone to Bumrungrad International Hospital in Thailand, where over 1 million patients from 16 countries have access to the best oncologists in the world through Watson. And that is improving the outcomes. Another great example would be Medtronic, which is using glucose monitors to predict hypoglycemia in diabetes patients. If Watson, and Watson does this well, can give a patient a 3-hour advance notice of an event, think of how many events we're preventing every day. Under Armour has used apps to help everyday people stay fit and be healthy without needing to go to medicine. Another place we've used Watson is in the law. So lawyers also have amazing data. Just this week, we've been reading 10,000 treaties between Britain and the EU because apparently there's a change, and now people have to understand how those treaties are going to be evolved. We had just 3 students in a startup at the University of Toronto built a business because they trained Watson on the language and policies of bankruptcy law in the United States, so the lawyers can ask the question in natural language and get an answer back. It's sifting through medicine to really be not the lawyer, but the paralegal. If I look at Woodside down in Australia, they're using Watson for oil and gas exploration. The price of oil rigs are very expensive. Deepwater rigs can cost between $600 and $650 million to build. So if you can be more precise about it, you can save money. They used Watson to ingest all their knowledge of all the prior rigs they'd ever built. It took 200 million pages of technical documents, 30 years of institutional knowledge, so that now the engineers, whenever they start the next project, can ask questions and Watson will give them an answer. It's saving time and money and making better decisions today. If I go to a bank in Brazil called Bradesco, they've done an amazing job using Watson to help their front line, to help 55,000 agents in 9,000 branches get help from Watson, actually take the first couple of questions directly and then follow with human complex questions for about 55 products. So matching the right product to the right customer using learning is great. People are also being more clever. If I go to universities like we just talked about, at Georgia Tech, the professor who heads the computer science program had 4 teaching assistants for his class. One of them was named Jill Watson. Jill Watson got the best scores for being the most accurate. But the students didn't know that Jill Watson was actually AI. She'd studied 40,000 questions from the past 1.5 years that had been asked to TAs. She knew the answers, and she could help help all those students get through their homework. At Hilton Hotel, we're actually testing using a robot as a concierge, which is an interesting idea. For some of you, you may have seen the display out front. We worked with Marchesa to design a really interesting cognitive dress, which I'm quite excited about because this really dealt with emotion. So the dress changes colors based on what people are tweeting at an event. So at the Met Gala, it was quite an interesting show. And this work used AI, used Watson to help them find the right fabrics, help them look at thousands of reports in trade journals, to find new materials, to be innovative, to understand what Twitter meant about what was going on. So in all these professions, and there are so many more, people are finding that having a machine that can learn like a human, can learn on its own, can go deeper into neural networks for more sophisticated knowledge about images, more sophisticated knowledges about MRIs and X-rays, better understanding of technical issues, whether they be in the law or accounting. Watson's quite good at accounting. It's changing our field. If you can augment or virtualize the basic human task, we free up the minds of you and your customers to do more interesting and more creative things. And that's why I'm excited to be doing this. We're trying very hard to open the platform. We're also trying hard to teach people. I funded Watson Tech, which means that there are 240 universities in the world that are already teaching Watson courses. We want people to use it. You may have seen we sponsored the X Prize in AI. I want to inspire some of you to come up with great ideas. This prize will go, as voted by the TED audience, to the best use of AI to help humanity. And I truly believe that we're at a moment where we're going to help humanity in unprecedented ways in all of these fields. And that's what I'm excited about. And what I want to have in the rest of this conversation is the chance to talk about the here and the now. We will keep doing research. We will keep tackling bigger tasks and harder games. And that's important, but there's no reason to wait. Watson's here, AI is here. It's time for us to develop with it this afternoon. Thank you.
David, we are in the here and now, and I've just been looking at news reports over the last couple of days that mention companies, projects that are partnering with IBM Watson. So
Yes.
We've got medical imaging, building management, protecting steel workers, helping with AdWords, a self-driving bus, the TED Prize. You're working with Wimbledon. You're replacing accountants. You're even using
We're helping accountants.
You're even using the AI to edit a magazine, which worries me as a human editor of Wired.
Yes.
Are we at the stage where pretty much every kind of business needs to be an AI business?
I think so. So, I started my first company in the mid-90s with the advent of the browser, and then when I was at Publicis, we worked on search and mobile. There are big waves. To me, this wave of understanding huge scale, reasoning, deductive, inductive, abductive reasoning, learning, can change everything. So I do think any business that interacts with humans can be empowered by AI. I think it's essential. And this is one where the learning matters, so don't wait. Some people were late to the mobile game or they were late to the browser. You can't be late here because no matter when you start, it has to learn. So I think companies beginning to teach their version of AI are going to be the winners next year, the year after, and certainly 10 years from now.
So there are going to be a lot of CEOs listening, thinking, how do we become an AI business? And without pitching IBM Watson's own services, what advice would you give them? Because machine learning is not something everybody studied at university.
Yeah, well, so the good news is that there are services available that are being exposed, so you don't have to recreate all the neural networks and the algorithms. If I were a CEO of, and I met with a bunch this week, banks, fashion houses, energy companies, you've got to start with what is the intelligence of your company today? What is your, your intelligence? What is your, competitive advantage in the world? And then how am I going to teach that to a machine that I can use? And we certainly believe it's important to design those machines in a way that combine public data with your own company data, so you're extending your company's advantage. But I think you have to think about that. I think you have to think about, basically how do you virtualize your IP?
So Demis talked about building general AI, which is not going to happen for another 20 or 30 years. Does that mean IBM Watson is doing narrow AI?
So we have some general things, like we learned languages. So we learned the French language quite well. Watson is still not good with the subjunctive, but the rest is good. But we do believe the systems work better in expert lanes. So we are certainly focused on verticals. I think this may always be the case. I admire their work a great deal, but I would say you don't ask a journalist for cancer advice, and you don't ask an oncologist for legal advice. There's a reason as people we become expert in something, because the brain just works better. People who try to learn everything don't know much about anything. The same is true with computing systems. So we do believe a certain degree of specialization is actually more helpful. And it matches the way humanity actually works.
So do you have a 20-year roadmap?
We do have a 20-year roadmap, which has a lot to do with pervasiveness. So I started with my prior job around IoT. I start with the fact that computers will be all around us. We can wear them on our watches. We can see them on our screens. Certainly there's interesting new AR where there's cameras in the bottom of my glasses and AR in the corner. So if we're surrounded by pervasive computing, then we need to be able to talk to it and hear it and give real-time advice in the moment. And so I think our ability to actually bring computing power to people so they can live their lives, not hidden behind a screen, but walking around doing things, having fun, enjoying their life, with AI helping them, is just going to make people live more effectively.
So as the network gets smarter, with sensors everywhere sucking up data, with algorithms processing it, how do you see us interacting? There's a lot of interest at the moment in voice. Amazon and its Echo. Google is experimenting. A lot of the big companies are. Is the era of the screen as an interface over?
It's moving, right? I mean, there's still some things that you want to see visually. I showed a video and a couple of pictures, so sometimes you want a screen for video, but I do think we will more and more communicate. Our speech-to-text ratio, our speech-to-text error right now is 6.9%. The human is 4. So we're getting pretty close to the machine being able to hear as well as the human, process an answer and give it back. So it's just going to be much easier to talk. Yeah, I think there will be a lot more verbal interface, one. The second thing, though, I spend a lot of time with new generations. A lot of kids are communicating on things like Snapchat and Pinterest. They're communicating visually. They're texting photos. So I think we have to be equally good at making sure that real interaction can be visual as well as spoken.
There's growing numbers of technologies that are looking to understand not just what we're telling the network, but what we're feeling. There was a company called Emotioned that helped recognize expressions. Apple bought that company a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
How good in the next 5 years do you think the network is going to be at knowing how everybody here is actually feeling?
So we're focused on the same thing, and in fact, part of the Marchesa project was the dress was all driven off emotional cues. Yeah. So the trick is, how well are we good at humans at recognizing emotion? Or how much do people keep a poker face? We're certainly finding things from the face. We're finding more from tweets. Yep. We're finding more from profiles. Dating apps actually tell you a lot about what a person is by what words they use. Yep. Journalists are easy because they write a lot. Politicians are terrible because people write for them. So if you actually read all their speeches, you don't really know how they feel because they were reading something someone else wrote. So we need people to authentically say what they think, and then we can understand it and actually connect to them in emotional ways.
So talk about the specifics of your own project at the Waston team. How many people do you have? What kind of skill sets they need, and how you manage them in trying to understand people's intentions in a world of endless data?
Yeah, so I would say I'm more like a coach on a professional team. I don't know that I manage as much as I kind of encourage. We have brilliant, brilliant people. The bulk of the organization are scientists, computer scientists, data scientists. And they're working on the basic capabilities of understanding, reasoning, learning, and interacting with humans as a platform. And then there's the developers above that who are working on making those into services that are easy to use. Because what I know for sure, and this is different than the IBM of the past, my 20-year vision is that most of the great use cases of IBM Watson will not be done by IBM. They will be big companies, small companies, startups, developers, starting with that, adding their own data to make their own answers. So we're working to make it easy to use. We do make some simple applications like call center apps and whatever, because I think there's such a demand. But most of what we're doing is encouraging others to build on our platform.
And how many people do you have working as engineers in the team?
We don't release the number, but it's in the many, many thousands.
Wow, and Demis only has 300 people.
Yeah. Not everyone at IBM is working on Waston. Everyone cares about it, but it's a big group. It's a big group directly, and then there's a much bigger group with the ecosystem.
And is the business model AI as a service?
Yes, it is absolutely. Everything is AI as a service, is a subscription business. People start it immediately for free. That's a new price point for us, but we want people to explore, to build applications, and then as they start using them, they pay every time we do a calculation for them. And then if it's an application, people subscribe to it like you would to Workday or Salesforce.
And presumably at some stage you won't have humans talking to your customers because the AI will do it automatically.
Well, listen, in order to scale, we have to do that today. Most of our developers go to Bluemix directly and pull the APIs. It's all kind of self-explanatory. In some ways, you add service when your software has a design flaw, right? If things are easy to use, people can use them. So that doesn't mean I don't love humans, but I want our humans, the customer-facing part of our humans, to really be helping postulate these bigger questions. What is your IP? What is your advantage? How do you use Watson at a bigger scale? The day-to-day use of it, developers in your own organization can do it.
There's a lot of excitement at the moment about these things called bots.
Yes.
Bots being little algorithms that solve particular tasks that you might encounter when having a messaging thread with a retailer. Is the hype justified?
I do think, so a lot of people build bots using Watson. So, and I watch generally this trend. There's a lot of advantages to it. So one of the things we've solved in the science is, we call it holding state, which means you can ask me a question, Watson remembers, it knows the pronoun for the next question, so we can go 4 or 5 rounds versus starting over. When that happens, it was in the film at the beginning, in a place like North Face, the bot can help you find the right jacket in the right color for the right occasion. So it's more helpful to people to find answers. So I think we went through a period of search being the primary interface, but you really have to be pretty precise about what you're looking for. In a lot of other places, what a bot can be is more consultative. And I think that helps people solve more complex problems.
So we're in a world now where voice and bots and new ways that the network recognizes us through our presence, through our feelings. Is it going to be a world where you have to build products, you have to have businesses that offer absolutely no friction, otherwise you won't survive economically?
Yeah, I do think the economics work against friction, right? When we look at the biggest car company doesn't own any cars at Uber, the biggest hotel company doesn't own any rooms at Airbnb. They've taken the friction out. They just match people well. AI will more and more match people to the right answers. You need to take the friction out. You need to get people to the answer or the right direction immediately, and then the humans solve the unsolved hard problems.
So we're still at the stage where the algorithm isn't always as good as the human. If you look at translation, for instance, we've all had experiences where there's been awkward translations. Do we need the human as well as the machine at this stage to implement?
I think we're always going to need a human and a machine. So first of all, we don't think machine translation works for harder problems. So when we teach Watson a language, it knows 9 now. We make it learn from scratch, so that in each language, whether it's French, German, Arabic, it's native. Because there's a lot lost in translation. Languages their syntax is different, semantics don't work. So it's also important to do it right. You can't take shortcuts. So you have to learn native, and you have to learn oncology native, and you have to learn radiology natives, first of all. Secondly, what's important is for humans to accept the leverage of this, that it can get you to the right bankruptcy law statutes, it can get you to the right proven treatment on cancer. Then you spend your human energy solving the problem. Watson's not going to cure cancer. It's going to free up human capacity to actually do the work that's not been done to solve it. So I think humans actually have to raise their game, be more intelligent, be more inquisitive, more curious, so that they're accepting leverage for simple tasks and applying our minds to harder ones.
But the bigger problem humans are going to have is holding on to their jobs as the algorithm proves that it's cheaper and often more efficient. How much should we be worried about, I guess, a lot of middle-class jobs disappearing because of AI replacing them?
Wow.
Somebody is scared of losing their job.
I guess. So, listen, I think there's a transition, right? So in every tech wave, if I look at healthcare, 100 years ago, there were less jobs in healthcare than there are today, and 90% of those jobs were manual, making the beds, emptying bedpans. So many things have now been automated so that people can do higher order jobs. So I do think people have to be concerned about their education, about lifelong learning, in order to raise the game. And I think as societies, to avoid disruption, we have to be concerned with making sure everyone has the opportunity, access to computing, access to AI, and access to education.
But this is going to be a growing political issue, I guess, if the radiographer is not needed because the machine does it, if the truck driver is not needed because the smart network moves the car, if the journalist, God forbid, is not needed because the AI edits the magazine. If you were talking,
it didn't write it, edit it. So
if you were talking to policymakers, what advice would you give them to help prepare society for the next 10, 20 years of this transition?
Access to education, I think, has to be top of the game, making sure people really learn. Access to computing, making sure everyone has access to the way they're going to interact with AI. I'd put that at the top of the game as well. So we do spend a lot of time with policymakers. We care about this. You've got to make sure your workforce is ready for the next thing. On the other hand, there are a bunch of countries who are worried about offshoring. AI actually allows you to bring it back onshore because it's computerized, so it can create jobs. But you do need a policy about it. We do have to work and make sure that society is ready for this.
This is a big move for IBM to go directly to a huge investment in AI as a business service. IBM's had various identities, I guess, over time, from a hardware computing company. We're going to ignore this. We're going to keep going to a service and consulting company. How, from your side, from your experience on the inside of this company, how hard is it to change a company with a couple of 100,000 employees to change that culture and say, okay, we're going to have AI at the center of pretty much everything we do?
Well, it is hard, right? So IBM's over 100 years old. So it's moved from a machine company, right? Tabulating machines, to computing is hardware, hardware to software, software to service, and now service to cognitive and cloud. In each one of those, it took really brave leadership, and I give Ginni credit for that. It takes stamina to power through. It takes being willing to either change the people's skill or change the people. So I think it's also just make sure you've got the right people for the task. So it can be done, but I think when you are stewards of a brand like IBM and you're responsible for this, you just do what's necessary. And you declare it, and you declare it loudly, and you're really clear. And I assure you, every decision of all 380,000 people at IBM is clear. The first priority is cloud and cognitive. They work hand in hand. So, and what I have to be really clear is, okay, that's good for, it makes my job kind of fun. I have to be really clear what we're going to invest in so people can follow it. And then we get there.
And what would you say to some skeptics that I've heard say, well, this is a marketing wrapper around software that's already widely available. IBM talks about Jeopardy, it talks about these use cases, but actually there's not much that's fundamentally original in the AI that's being developed. It's just packaged in a way that suits clients. How would you respond to those sorts of views?
Well, I don't get that. I mean, it's the ability to read all those cancer records or to read those x-rays, that was really hard work, that was absolutely breakthrough, and it hadn't been done by anyone before. So I do think early on the Watson name was applied to more simple analytics, so we've been more clear about when we use it. I think some of our ad agencies get carried away. We don't have talking robots that sit around with Carrie Fisher yet. So, but part of what I've done the last 5 months is everything I talk about is real. Every example I showed today exists, it's in the market, people use it, they make money from it, and they pay us money for it. Every one of those. So that wouldn't happen if it weren't original and new and needed. So my answer is the proof's in the pudding. We make real things and people value them and they use AI.
And who do you see as your competitors now? Is it Google and Facebook and Amazon?
Well, certainly all three of those. There's a number of people approaching, you can start with those three, that are approaching AI, and they started with very good search and/or social networks.
Yep.
Both of those are built off single graphs.
Yep.
And so they naturally then gravitate to the general AI, and God bless them. We follow their science, we respect it. Where I think our contribution is to help companies who want to have a competitive advantage in that world, who don't want all their data to be loaded up into the public internet, or have every image loaded up onto a social network. So we're going to help the people build professional enterprise versions of AI, and it's our contribution to the field. Nobody else is doing it quite that way, but yeah, we totally respect the other people building other forms of AI and hope to learn from them.
Last question. What do you think will be the single most significant application of artificial intelligence in the lifetime of the people in the room?
So, because AI recognizes patterns, it's increasingly good at prediction. So I think for people in the room, it can predict medical issues before they happen and give you the choice to take preventative action. Not everyone does. There's a lot of pre-diabetes people who still eat French fries. But it will give you much more choice in controlling your life. It will prevent accidents. It will prevent calamities, so that people can live kind of happy, healthy, full lives. Not because they see everything in the future, but they have a much better sense of the danger, so they can enjoy the good parts of their lives. I think that will happen in the next 2 decades, and I'll be really proud to be a part of it.
It's great to end on an optimistic note. Please can we thank David Kenny of IBM Watson.
Thank you. Nicely done. Thank you.
So one of the other companies that's attracted a huge amount of talent in machine learning is IBM for its Watson team. The man who's managing that project is called David Kenny, and I'm going to invite him to do a little presentation before we have a little conversation about some of the opportunities and implications of Watson. David Kenny.
Pretty new to it, but I have to tell you that it's just an amazing group of people, and between Deep Blue and now, the IBM company has spent billions of dollars and tens of thousands of people on these projects. And we also very much believe in the entrepreneur, which is why I'm here. So we make more and more of Watson available in the last couple of years as APIs directly to startups. And I actually came from that side. So I was using Watson in my last job, which was to do the weather forecast. And the thing I wanted to do was do what Google did when they mapped the Earth for the mobile phone. I wanted to map the atmosphere so that we could know the weather for 3 billion locations on Earth on a mobile phone, which Bonjour tout le monde. It's a privilege to be with all of you. I appreciate the last presentation. It's true, we did Deep Blue. It was the beginning. That was simple machine learning. That was 20 years ago. In the 20 years between Deep Blue and now, we also won Jeopardy, which was a different set of tasks. And we've been working to make AI work in everyday life. So it's a movement forward. So it's good you have the beginnings on neural networks and how it works. What I thought I could add to the conversation is where we see it in our lives today. So today is July 1st. Today is my 5-month anniversary at the head of Watson. So I'm